This is Dr. Jerome Corsi, and today it is Monday. It's July 24th, 2023. Thank you for joining us on thetruthcentral.com. We're doing a podcast every weekday. First story I want to cover is one that I wrote. I authored the story, and it's on American Thinker right now. You can follow me also on American Thinker. I do quite a bit of writing on that channel. And American Thinker is, I think, a good place for writing serious essays. This one is about this leading climate scientist whose name is Judith Curry. And I'll reach back here and get her book if I can for a minute. Let's see. This is it right here. Sorry about that, but I wanted to make sure you saw the book. This is the book right here, Climate Uncertainty and Risk. Her name's at the top. You can see it there. Judith Curry, Curry, Judith Curry. She's a very prominent climate scientist. She's well known. She headed at the Georgia Tech their geoscience division. They had a whole department for it. And she just wrote this book in 2023. Now, the reason why this is important is that Judith Curry had been, going back to 2007, she had joined the consensus that there was global warming, and she accepted the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, their fourth assessment as authoritative, which said that human-generated expenditures of hydrocarbon fuels, burning hydrocarbon fuels, release too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that's causing global warming and climate change. Now, the turning point for her was 2009, when Judith Curry recognized that the ClimateGate, saw the emails coming out of this East Anglia computer, realized that scientists like Michael Mann were forging data, just making, their whole thesis was, the hockey stick was that the Earth's temperature had always been just fine until the industrial age. And then we started burning hydrocarbon fuels, and like a hockey stick, which has a long blade and a handle that shoots straight up, or I guess the hook that goes straight up, the blade, that was because of human-caused climate change, burning hydrocarbon fuels, etc. Now, when she realized they rigged the data, and these scientists did admit it, I write about it in my book, which is the truth about energy, global warming, and climate change, it opened up her eyes. She began to realize that she was being lied to. Now, what she does in her new book, I think, is important. She doesn't exactly release the idea. She wants to be very correct politically. She left universities about 2017 after she realized this was a hoax. She didn't fit anymore. And she went into a private company where she's consulting now on energy issues for private corporations. It's president of Climate Forecast Applications Network, CFAN. She founded that in 2006 under the Georgia Tech's Venture Lab program. Now, in the book, she makes it clear that we have a lot of natural variability in the climate, which is one of the main points I've been making, and that the sun and water currents are probably the two most in the oceans, two huge effects, and clouds, much more important than carbon dioxide. And the crux of her article is mathematical, because what she was saying is that you need these computer-driven models in order to make the IPCC predictions work. In other words, they're saying if we have 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels of heat, 1 degree centigrade, or 1 degree Celsius, 1 degree Celsius above, 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, we will have catastrophic global warming. And she's saying that comes from a mathematical model. Now, the problem with mathematical models, and this is what Curry knows, is that MIT mathematician and meteorologist Edward Norton Lorenz became known for the butterfly effect, he had two major mathematical principles, which I discuss at length in my book, which is number one, that the equations that determine climate are nonlinear. They are equations that are differential equations, but they don't always come out the same. The variables interact. You can get differences, that an outcome, which are unpredictable. And secondly, what's known as the butterfly effect, which is that small differences in measurement, especially to start, make huge differences in outcome. The butterfly effect was Norton developed a fractal model, which looked like a butterfly wings, where he was showing how these patterns and numbers relate. And there's definitely a pattern to them, but they're not predictable. So he was saying that if a butterfly in China flapped its wings, it could cause a tornado in Kansas. In other words, anything changing in this system, even small, could produce a big effect. And so therefore, what he was saying is flapping of the wings is a small difference in initial measurement that has a huge difference in climate outcomes. But the fact that wing flapping in China does not always cause a tornado in Kansas, because the equations that rule climate change are nonlinear. So sometimes the butterfly causes a tornado and sometimes it does not. In other words, the weather is not predictable, something we all know. Can't get an accurate weather report to tell you what the weather is going to be tomorrow or next week, except that it's going to be, if it's summer, it's going to be more warm than it is in winter. Okay, so if it can't predict with any precision, then these mathematical models that are developed by the IPCC just reflect the biases of the people who created them. And that's the problem. And when she acknowledged that, her whole book is about that we should not use mathematical models to predict future scenarios, especially these disastrous scenarios. You know, the Al Gore, the Earth's going to, seas are going to rise, cities are going to go away. She's saying more we should do is we should different climate scenarios. She wants it more short term, more like, what do these factors mean in combination? What's the likely outcomes? Well, probability and the inability to predict the weather means that as soon as she embraced Lorenz, she abandoned Michael Mann and the hockey stick and the IPCC forever. Now, as a result, Judith Curry has been very highly respected. She was testifying before Congress, I guess that was at the end of last week. And she was saying that how now she is being scorned, ridiculed. The left is heaping upon her, not being invited. I mean, this is a real mafia in terms of the left controlling universities, controlling the newspapers, controlling government grants, controlling the educational system, promotion and tenure. If you don't ideologically agree with them, you're not going to advance anywhere. Well, that's our second story, because it's also happening to another very prominent, we reported on this last week, because again, it surprised me, but we had a very prominent John Clauser, who is a Nobel Physics laureate, and he was talking about the corruption of climate science. So he's the 2022 Nobel Physics laureate John Clauser. He slammed the climate emergency narrative as a dangerous corruption of science that threatens the world economy and the well-being of billions of people. So as soon as he did that, he began to be pounded by the left. He was going to give a talk at the International Monetary Fund on climate models. That was abruptly canceled. The page announcing the event was removed from the IMF website. And he was due to speak at the Independent Evaluation Office this Thursday under the title, "Let's Talk, How Much Can We Trust the IPCC Climate Predictions?" It would appear that not a lot isn't the politically correct answer. So Clauser he's a long-standing critic of these climate models, which is the crux of what the IPCC is all about. IPCC is all about mathematical projections into the future. They have mathematical models that can predict 100 years of the past record. Well, of weather. Well, that's data. They're just rigging the model to make those numbers come out. But when they run that model in the future, it doesn't predict anything. The predictions have all been terribly wrong. Al Gore's predictions haven't come true. This is the nature of the climate movement, is that their predictions are wrong. Now, what does this mean? It means fundamentally we're being lied to. It means that this is all just, as I say, basically neo-Marxist attempting to destroy capitalism by attacking hydrocarbon fuels. Because if hydrocarbon fuels are emitting carbon dioxide that is going to cause global warming, well, then we need to stop using them. That's what the whole argument is. But carbon dioxide is a minuscule percentage of the molecules in the atmosphere. It is not nearly as powerful as the sun. And even if it were, these models do not make accurate predictions because the mathematics of climate mean you can't make accurate predictions. It's not possible to make accurate predictions. And then you've got extraneous events, like you've got an asteroid hitting Earth. You've got volcanoes occurring. I mean, look at the Earth. The continents have separated. The Earth has changed dramatically. We've had 5 mass extinctions before human beings got here. Now, to prove the point, in these articles I'm covering right now, I want to go to one more, which is, it didn't get much attention last week, but a skyscraper-sized asteroid, which is pretty huge, 20-story building, was coming towards Earth, very close to Earth, closer than the moon, and scientists hadn't seen it coming. Why? Because it came out of the sun, and it was not where they're looking for it, and also it's hard to detect coming out of the sun. So it was a 200-foot wide, 60 meters space rock. It went past our planet on July 13th at 53,000 miles per hour, according to NASA. But because the rock flew toward Earth from the direction of the sun, our sun's glare blinded the telescopes to the asteroid's approach until long after it had passed. We didn't even realize it had passed Earth. So astronomers didn't catch this until July 15th, when a telescope in South Africa, part of the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Blast Alert System, which is ATLAS, ATLAS, array of telescopes designed to spot asteroids several days or weeks before they hit Earth. It caught the rock making its exit from our neighborhood, and more than a dozen other telescopes also spotted the rock shortly afterwards. But again, it's an indication of just how unpredictable, despite all our technology, how unpredictable weather, climate, Earth is. This is not a stable place. We'd like to think of it as stable. We'd like to think of it as permanent. We'd like to think we're not going to die. We'd like to think everything's all, but you've been here maybe a person 100 years. Well, we've got 2,000 years of recorded history. We've got 4.6 billion years of Earth history. These are minuscule times that our life is. Yet we tend to think it's permanent. This is a fundamental flaw in human thinking, which again makes us think that we can perfect things, or we have to perfect things. We don't want to accept that we live in an inherently dangerous, unpredictable planet that could change at any minute. And that's the reality of it. And people like the true scientists, this Judith Curry, and this guy Custer, who is so let's get his name correct, who is, his name is John Clauser. John Clauser, the physics Nobel laureate. These are legitimate climate scientists. They're not ideologically driven. They're not Marxists masquerading as scientists. They're not, social engineer Marxists masquerading as pharmaceutical companies. They're not out to re-engineer human beings to be a higher species and get rid of everybody else who's not capable of getting to that level. This neo-Marxism is one of the most dangerous philosophies, and my second book will be out pretty soon on the truth about neo-Marxism, cultural Maoism, and anarchy. It's going to be a trilogy, and I think it's going to make an important statement once it's all together, people see all three books, and in the context of what we're going through, we're aiming towards transhumanism. And by the way, all this gender stuff and all this nonsense, all the AI, it's all trying to set the stage for this group of nutcases at the World Economic Forum can perfect human beings. And every time that gets tried, we have a world war. The Ubermensch from Nietzsche, Hitler with the Aryan Superman. These are bad ideas. And they are fundamentally ideas because human beings don't accept God, not easily. And they want to think we can be God. Chris, do you have any comments on this?
You can always add to that the philosophies of places like North Korea, where you have to worship the, what was it, deer leader, if you will. I believe that's what they call him.
Yes, something like that. I mean, they always have a leader you've got to rule with the rules that you have to bow down to. By the way, I think Biden is on the way out. I saw some of the coverage in the Gateway Pundit this weekend where they're predicting that before impeachment, and it looks to me like the Congress is building a little bit towards impeachment. I mean, certainly the country is questioning Biden. And as we get deeper into this recession, it's going to be much more questioning of Biden going on. By the way, so I was on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie this past week on Thursday, and I want to thank everybody who did listen. It did quite well. We were talking about my new book on the coming global crisis that we're going to face pretty soon, global economic slowdown, massive, and it's going to cause a historic gold rush. And I was recommending essentially that people get some gold, and including IRAs, 401ks, because the stock market could crash 10,000 points. I think we're setting up for that to happen in October, probably. By the way, if you go to our homepage, our sponsor, Dean Heskin, who wrote the book with me, is the head of Swiss America. And if you call the 800 number, which is 800-520-6268, you can get to talk to one of the representatives. They're one of their counselors in terms of a consultative approach to your needs or ability to diversify with some gold holdings, and you get a free book. They're sending out free books to people who call that 800 number. Now let's go on to a couple more stories here. The risk of German de-industrialization. I've been trying to cover this story pretty extensively over the last bit of time because I think it's symptomatic of what the climate change movement is going to produce, which is a lower standard of living. I think that's what it's intended to produce. You can't have meat. Let's confiscate farms. Let's go after nitrous oxide so you can't have fertilizer to reduce the world's food supply. These people are depopulationists. They're Malthusians. They think there's too many people. That was the first part of my book on the truth about energy, global warming, and climate change. I showed you how this movement evolved and how it became a movement to eliminate maybe as many as 50 to 80% of the world's population. They think we'd be fine in a pre-industrial age. They want about 500 million people. They think that as long as they and their machines, they being World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, those types, the multinational corporations and the oligarchs who control them. And we are going into a world where there's going to be the super rich and everybody else because the middle class is rapidly getting wiped out. That was a large part of the discussion on Coast to Coast last week. But at any rate, with the German economy, the Germans cut down, they closed their coal plants, they've closed their nuclear plants. They're wanting to go to this transition to increasingly, climate scientists are saying you can't transition to energy and solar battery technology. The systems just are not robust enough to make it work on the scale needed. So the German economy essentially is losing competition to as a place to do business for manufacturing. Foreign investors are staying away and focusing their attention on emerging markets. That's where the BRICS are going to have a great opportunity. They'll be meeting next month in South Africa. This is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and a group of countries are going to join them. They're going to create their own gold-backed currency, and they're going to push de-dollarization. These countries are going to get massive amounts of investment and may have the strongest currency in the world. We are de-dollarizing. Everything I see in this country with the woke agenda is to reduce, destroy our educational system. Articles are being written now. The educational systems are not teaching kids how to read or to do math. Diversity training in kindergarten is not going to help them get jobs. It's not going to help them lead productive lives if they can't read and they can't add. Well, they've got a computer, a calculator. Well, that's great. They also ought to know how mathematics work. So investment decisions are becoming more difficult for Germany, in large part because the energy costs are accelerating. The energy costs right now have been decreased because the global demand for oil is down as the world is going into a global recession. So these German executives are beginning to complain about it. De-industrialization, a reduction in industrial activity in the country, while the companies relocate elsewhere, is a clear sign that Germany's already in a recession, and that recession is going to deepen. Now, the next story here on the Federal Reserve, it looks like the Federal Reserve is not going to quit raising interest rates. Now, the big disconnect here is the Fed saying, well, we've got to have a recession. And the Fed's now actively talking about having a recession in order to control inflation. And they're saying it's to reduce demand in the economy. That might reduce inflation. But the real problem is this printing of money. We're $33 trillion in debt. We have $1 trillion in the interest payments on the debt now annually. We have to meet that $1 trillion in payments. The Fed's just going to, Treasury's going to print more money. The Federal Reserve's just going to buy it. And we're going to say, here, this is your interest payment. It's completely made up money, funny money. And it's a Ponzi scheme because we can just print up money to pay debt, then create new deficit spending. It's a complete road to ruin. And foreign nations are realizing it because if we're just printing money in order to pay the interest, we are really not repaying the debt with anything of value. Why don't we just print a stamp, a $33 trillion coin, and say, here, the whole national debt's repaid. It's a sure road to hyperinflation. And right now, the middle-class families are getting hurt because the costs of food are going up. Housing is completely at a standstill right now. I'm seeing articles again where people are saying 30-year fixed mortgage at 7%. That's a showstopper for an awful lot of middle-class buyers. And also people are saying, well, I got a 3% or lower interest rate on my mortgage during the pandemic or before when interest rates were near zero. So why would I give up this to go into a 7% mortgage, which means you don't put your house on sale and you don't buy one. And the whole market begins to collapse, just like the commercial real estate market. Talk about the decline of America. I've seen articles debating whether or not San Francisco is going to become as bad as Detroit. People say, oh, no, that'll never happen. It's too beautiful. It's got too much culture to it. Well, go look at the Tenderloin. See how possible it is not to be robbed in the Tenderloin, and how the violence in the Tenderloin is spreading throughout San Francisco's downtown. Commercial real estate buildings are closing and being walked away from. San Francisco is the next woke leftist ghost town. Or it won't be a ghost town, it'll just be dystopian. If you like, all the drug dealers are going to California because they're not being arrested, and they can have, deal their trade and do fine without worrying about law enforcement. And this last story that I want to cover today, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, these DEI programs, would come right out of the woke agenda. We've got to include all these bizarre freaks that can't decide what the gender is. I saw in Italy they're not going to let transgenders into the Miss America or Miss Italy contests. Finally, I think some of the countries are waking up, become awake, not woke. And, after the George Floyd riots and all the Black Lives Matters, and we were trying to get rid of Donald Trump, the left was running wild in the streets. Law enforcement was taking a knee to them. So what the corporations are realizing is that woke is broke. So like Budweiser, which advertised with this transgender, are found that they are losing 35% of their market share, except maybe in California. They have increased their market share in California. At any rate, the idea of getting these DEI into corporations is a fad, and the honeymoon is over. So right now the rage is over. People are firing. Woke corporations are abandoning the DEI ship in face of growing disenchantment and backlash. Droves of DEI executives, once prized as oracles, find themselves unemployed and deplatformed. So corporations are saying, look, do we really want to embrace this agenda? Because the backlash is tremendous. And if you're going to be in business, you want people who are capable of making the business work. You don't want them sitting there because we've got one this, we've got one of that, we've got one of this, we got one of that, we got all these. Okay, can they do the job? So you got school kids wearing T-shirts that say justice. Okay, why don't they have T-shirts that say, algebra? Why don't they have T-shirts that talk about reading books? Well, that's not taught. We're teaching our public school system has been hijacked by the left with a social justice agenda, and with the Supreme Court ending affirmative action. So there was I think a Harvard law professor is even writing saying to the Biden administration, just ignore the Supreme Court's decision on affirmative action. We can still do race quotas to determine who gets into schools. All of this agenda, going back to the 1970s in school busing, all of this agenda has failed. The point I'm making today that's consistent throughout all the things we've talked about is that the left destroys. Marxism kills. It negates. It can't create. These ideas are destructive ideas. They're schizophrenic. Basically, my reality is what I say it is. Well, okay, so that's a great postmodern idea, and you might get far in a French coffee shop on the Champs-Élysées. Sit down with John Sartre, and he was alive, and discuss existentialism. The French love to do that. But the point is, there is reality, there is objective reality, and there are ways things work in laws. God created this place, there's God's laws here. And you can't just make them up. You can't say, well, sex is different than gender. And I'm seeing increasing stories with transgenders who are regretting the transition. I think we are going to find that the wind and solar transition is equally destructive, and it will kill billions if it's enforced with the authoritarianism that the left wants to enforce it. Chris, any thoughts?
Oh, you hit that nail on the head. I don't hear a lot of the left shouting, save the whales, like they used to a long time ago, because the wind turbines are killing them.
Yeah, I think what's happening with a lot of this is once it reaches this level, people are basically going to say, these people are nuts. Common sense finally kicks in. And, this song that's out there about try this in a small town, oh, that's racist, everything is racist.
Everything they
uh,
don't like is racist or anti-climate change or anti-gay. They like to use them
or
for something.
anti-Semite. Look what they're
Right.
doing to Robert Kennedy right now.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's easy for them because the funny thing was, if you watched and I'm sure you did, you watched the hearing last week where he did
Yes.
testify on government weaponization. These libs were laughed off. They were laughed off by not only their colleagues, but all the witnesses that were there were just acting like they're just saying you people are crazy in different words. They were
Well,
actually doing it.
it's a phenomenon that, if you go back to the French Revolution, Robespierre and all this had a reign of terror. They went crazy killing people, and guillotining. These phenomena, these popular delusions, these basically bizarre ideas to captivate human beings. All women are a little weird, so I guess they're witches. We ought to burn them at the stake. Well, that idea was going on for, in the Middle Ages with the Inquisition. Finally, people woke up and said, "Hey, this is a bad idea. We'll need to be burning all the women."
No, that's not a good idea.
It's not a good
Also,
idea.
but they use it politically for women who mouthed off. All of a sudden, they say something against the local leadership. Well, you're a witch then. Let's burn you at the stake. Another way to get rid of you. It's the old cancel culture. That's what it was.
Well, they want to cancel anybody that doesn't agree with them. And then this whole election, what's coming up in the elections, and I'm reading increasingly articles warning about it, because I think we're faced with the left again wanting to do mail-in ballots, early voting, late voting, extend the count of the vote. You can do a mail-in ballot the day of the election. We'll count it some day later. All these things are designed for cheating.
Yes.
And anyone who knows anything about voting knows that these are the things you do if you want to make possible cheating elections. Now, if we have another cheating election and, ballots are showing up in trucks and they're being brought in the middle of the night and being run through machines, and the machines don't seem to work and the numbers can be altered,
Right.
Eventually people are going to say, enough. And how many San Franciscos do we want every major city in the United States to be a Detroit or San Francisco? That's where it's going.
It was legal cheating, I suppose. You can't say that it was voter fraud because everything was legal. The vote harvesting, the ballot boxes, the mailing to everybody willy-nilly, and the votes coming in. You couldn't prove that somebody else was taking those votes. Here's something, though. What bothers me is when we had mechanical voting machines, people were able to count the votes inside of a day. Maybe it took an extra day at times, especially for local elections, because a lot of them were close. But it was a day or two. We'd know who won, and everything was good. Now it takes all sorts of extra days, and apparently people can't do anything, or they need to either count in some kind of bubble at this point. And then finally, 9 days later, the results on election night or the day after, some of them aren't relevant enough because it was skewed, usually, almost always, one way.
Well, was it the 2000 Florida recount where Al Gore refused to accept that he lost and demanded all that's when all of this election contesting and all of this started, and the rigging started. It started before then. The Democrats were figuring out
was
why.
It 1960?
It goes, 1960 with Jack Kennedy.
Right.
But again, Nixon did he did the gracious thing, which was say, look, I'm not going to demand this be recounted. I'll just lose. And he was, at that time, he was a sore loser, but he came back and became president.
Right.
Okay. So now the point is, if we don't have election integrity, then we've lost the republic, because we cannot let a mob, and especially this kind of neo-Marxist mob, rule, or the United States will become a second-rate country. And it's on the way. And others are seeing this. So you've got Russia and China on the ascendancy, got the BRICS nations on the ascendancy. They're doing things that are going to be productive for the future. But I think the real risk, and the one I'm concerned about, is nuclear war. And we'll talk about that more through subsequent broadcasts. But what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on in Iran, what's going on right now with China on the edge of, could take Taiwan any given day. We could wake up and China's invaded Taiwan. All these things have the potential to go to regional and global conflicts. So just to wrap up, I think any last comment, Chris, before we wrap up?
Any last words? I guess
For
that
today.
works for me. Yeah, I get it. I just want to harken back to that DEI article you talked about. Is DEI going to DIE? You can find it on the truthcentral.com. What was built over the last 10 years was a huge industry. Actually, it was the seeds were sown in the 90s, but what we have now is a large extra arm of the private and public sector, a very expensive one called the diversity industry, where you have people making six figures running huge diversity departments, but their sole job is to make sure quotas are met, and then make sure people who are ingrates get to screech and scream about things and fire people that might be making a little too much money if they're a certain, let's just say, non-protected class. But right now it's turned to a huge industry. It's very expensive. It's going, the cost has been passed down to the consumers. And worst of all, it contributed to very, very high, it's a huge contributor to extremely high education costs, which now Biden wants us, the taxpayers, to fund.
Well, I think all these things are, we're at a turning point with a paradigm shift. And if the world doesn't come back to God, this is not going to be a particularly great place to live anywhere. At any rate, do take a look at our sponsors, please. If people are saying my hair looks better these days, I look better than I did 10 years ago. Try this My Vital C. I solidly recommend it. It's a miracle molecule. This carbon 60 mixed with olive oil right there. You can see it. Please take a look at it and try it. I'll have a book out with this very quickly with Chris Burries. We're getting that finalized right now. And Swiss America, take a look at that. And Eric Smith, we're going to be doing more about Eric Smith and his tool to do the Walking Liberty half dollar. Please take a look at these things. They keep us going, and we greatly appreciate. Our sponsors are all things that I believe in and have used for many years. So to wrap up, in the end, God always wins. God will win here too. And in the spirit of 2 Chronicles 7:14, join me in getting down on our knees to ask God forgiveness for letting this craziness get to this point. We should have been fighting the removal of God in the schools much harder. In the 1940s, we should have been fighting Roe v. Wade. We've killed billions of babies. That's great crime. And God will win. But it would be a lot better if we get on our knees first and ask God's forgiveness. So this is Dr. Jerome Corsi. Today is Monday, July 24th, 2023. We're broadcasting with thetruthcentral.com every weekday. Thank you for joining us. God bless.